Good. Okay. So before we start, we're going to kind of start with a little demonstration because I want you guys to understand when we're talking about network security and encrypted email and important information like that, I want you to understand the certain areas that I am speaking of. So what I'm going to do is this is going to be an email, and me and Bob are going to email each other back and forth this document. I have an encryption service on my end, okay? Whether I'm the settlement company, the lender, the real estate agent, I have an encryption email. So I take this email and I'm building a brick wall all the way around it, okay? And I'm gonna go and I'm gonna deliver this to Bob. Now, if Bob doesn't have an encrypted email, he doesn't have any walls around it. If he wants to encrypt it, and he's using encrypted email, let's just pretend that he is. Let's pretend that I'm being as safe as I can be, Bob's being as safe as he can be. Bob is gonna come out here with his walls, and this email is going to go into his walls so that he can bring it into his office and read it and secure it. So go ahead, Bob, come get it. The second that Bob comes and gets it, my walls are going to go. Bob's walls are coming up, he's going. What happens during this handoff? There's a vulnerability every single time. So we've encrypted it. You think it's 100% secure, but it's not. It's about 95. If we don't encrypt it, it's 0 secure. So don't assume that by sending these encrypted emails that your information is safe. That's not how it works, but it makes it more safer. So when I talk about the security, I want you to understand that there is a serious vulnerability that's out there that we haven't figured out how to protect. This is what the government's working on, the FBI is working on. This is the big product right here, this in between in the handoff. It is a big vulnerability. That's where they come in and they get you. So if you think about it, you might have a hacker who's sitting in there, and you got to be real smart to get into that little space. You have to find that vulnerability, you got to get in there. It's there, it exists. So you find it, you're a hacker. You found access in. You've got a real estate company, you got a settlement company, you got access, you're in. At that point, all you do is feed the information down to your little minions who are going to start sending out the little emails, start communicating with the settlement company, start communicating with the real estate agent, they get in. So, you know, just because you got a hacker up here, he's got a bunch of people working for him, and those are the ones that are sending out all those emails. Those are the ones that are sending out all that stuff that you're responding to or not responding to. So basically, it's very difficult to be 100% secure. You're not going to be able to secure yourself 100%. But basically, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to do the things the old-fashioned way. You're going to have to talk to your people. You're going to have to get to know your people. You're going to have to know, I'm expecting this email. Or you need to let them know right up front, hey, you're not going to be able to change if you want to check or you want to wire at the last minute. Because now what we have is settlement companies who are saying, we cut a check, we cut one check, period. We don't change it. We're not going to wire it. Or if we're wiring, we're not going to change the wiring instructions. You know, you have to physically come in, and the thing with the check, of course, now is if they issue a check, you can take a picture, and that check can be deposited. They can go back in and say, oh, I want to change it. You know, takes a while to catch. So make sure that right up front, your buyers and your sellers are aware of what's going on and like what their responsibilities are going to be if they need to change from a wire or a proceeds check, however they want that money handled. So, are you secure? So as you know, what this presentation will do is kind of take you through some of the things that you need to look for, what you need to be aware of. As you know, right now there is a million things out there, all sorts of scams. Everywhere, credit card scams, I mean, you've got, you know, the Ashley Madison scams, you know, you name it, it's all over the place. So those are the things that you need to really keep an eye out for, is like what's going on and what's the latest and the greatest? What are the things that are people talking about? So the most common is the phishing emails. And I think that we've all have seen these phishing emails. But the problem with the phishing emails is that unless you look real close, you're not going to see that it's coming from a fake source. But there are ways to tell. And the way to tell is that typically they will email you something, a bank statement, a retirement account, a colleague will send you an attachment, something from the payoff lender, a fake sales contract title request. I'm not sure if you guys are getting fake contracts, or the realtors getting fake contracts. Yeah. Okay, so the settlement companies are getting a fake contract constantly. So they'll send an email, oh, got a new order. It'll look like it's coming from their best realtor, you know, because they've they know everything about you, so they'll send a contract to the settlement company saying, oh, here, click the contract, download it. Our settlement companies do know that they don't ever open up a contract or a closing disclosure or anything unless they've expected you to send it. So they're very, I mean, they're getting very cautious when they're getting these things. The payoff lender, so imagine this. Imagine getting a payoff from Wells Fargo that looks like it's what you ordered, but yet in the little spot where it says the wiring instructions, the ABA and the account number are now different. So of course that isn't something that you have to worry about, it's something that Bob has to worry about. But that's a very common practice right now. So the hacker will get in there and they know that you're waiting on your payoff statement from Wells Fargo. They'll get the Wells Fargo bank statement, or they might get access, or they might create something, and it'll look like an actual payoff, but it'll have their ABA and their bank number on there. So they are changing payoffs on statements that are coming in. So that is something that we also have to look for and be very cautious of. So, and these are all things that are actively happening at our settlement companies. So we have stories rolling in every single day. Fortunately, the wires seem to be halting. It seems like the only ones that are getting through are anything that are less than $10,000 right now, because our settlement companies are really trying to crack down on this. So it seems like little small amounts are going out. Like I've seen a lot, 6,000, 6,500, 7,000, because ultimately what's happening is the settlement companies are just paying that money back. So, and that's the problem is, you know, if you're not doing your due diligence, the bank's not going to pay it just because you didn't pay attention to your, you know, security, and it's because, you know, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So those small monies, we see the title companies paying back. A lot of the ones that we've seen, like 50, 60,000, at least there's enough communication, and we have a lot of people that are every single day looking at the bank statements, or we have where the wires can't go out unless they're verifying them. So right now, this is a lot of the stuff that we're seeing. So this is a look at what the emails come in and what they look like. Looks legit. It's your Microsoft. It'd say that you want to cancel. It's notifying you that somebody's trying to hack into your account and change your password. Well, they're not. They just want you to hit that cancel the password, reset. So as soon as you hit that, you're done. So this looks legit. This also looks legit. It's an email. However, when you have a phishing email, if you look up at the top, you'll see where it says .com, and there's 2 letters after a .com. That means it's not going to that .com. It's being directed somewhere else. So the other thing is let's just say it looks legit. Usually there is a typo. There has to be something within this email that doesn't look quite right. There's stuff hidden in this email. So these are the things that you have to look for. In this Career Builder one, same thing. The only problem here is this link here that's highlighted in blue. You automatically think, oh, I'm going to go there, and you click on that. But if you hover your mouse over it, you'll notice that you're not actually going there. So one of the things that we recommend is never ever click on a link through an email, no matter what, ever. You close out the email and you open it up in a new web browser. That is the safest way to basically surf the internet or get to whatever website. For instance, McDonald's survey seems legit. If you want to take a McDonald's survey, you don't do it here. You go to mcdonalds.com and then you take the survey. And of course this is not a legit one, but this is just another example of, you might see something like this. This one is my favorite because what this is typically when your credit card has expired and your credit card is on file with like Amazon or eBay or Netflix, and then it expires, you get these. However, this is not a legit one. You won't know. The only way that you're going to know whether or not this is legit is go to netflix.com and check your billing. So you wouldn't want to enter into Netflix through here or any of your what do you call them? Applications or anything. You want to make sure that you go in and check the credit card information, or if it's saying there's a password or change the password, you want to go in that way just to avoid getting hit through these. Of course, you never want to change your password. This is another eBay one. Click here to change your password. You wouldn't want to do this. Go directly into eBay. So what we tell you is never enter a website through the email and always open up a new web browser. That's the easiest thing to do, especially if you have your bank statements that come to your email and it says, oh, click here to view your bank statement. Well, it's not a good idea to click here to get your bank statement. The best thing to do is to go to your bank and log in and view your bank statement. Because the second you do that, you're going in through an email, you're opening up a line of communication that has a vulnerability as opposed to just reaching into your bank account through their website. So just remember that, you know, when you're looking at these emails, you really have to pay attention. So the other things that you have to worry about besides your email is the malware. So basically it's spyware. What it is once it gets onto your machine, it's like a keylogger. It's just everything that you're typing in, username, password, whatever, it's just keying all your strokes. It's copying everything that you do. So when you see these, whoops, here we go. When you see these, it's too late. Most people will assume that by Xing out there, oh, I didn't get caught. Well, it's waiting for you to X there, okay? That's what these are designed to do. All right, you just think that, oh, I'm gonna click, you know, the X and get out. Once this is on your machine, once you've seen this and this is entering up in your web browser, it's too late, the malware's there. So it's sitting there in the background and it is just waiting for you to key a stroke or do whatever you need to do. If you see these, you need to know that, oh, sorry, I kind of missed a I think I took something out. Okay, so anyways, when you see these, you need to run a malware program. And once we get through the presentation, I think I got a couple of slides backwards, but I actually have a malware program that is free, that is recommended. Now, there's a difference because a lot of you have a work machine and a home machine. You might not be able to put the malware on your work machine. However, there's an IT department that is probably running something like this in the background and is automatically removing these, then you don't know. So where's it coming from? All of the, of course, problems that we're having is mostly from the emails not being encrypted. And of course, the realtors, the buyers, the sellers, the officers, the settlement agents should all know better. However, the buyers and the sellers don't. And as we discussed earlier, there is now a huge push for everybody to be responsible in educating their buyers and their sellers. So I'm not exactly sure how they're going to go about that, but I'm sure that it's going to come down to the realtor's responsibility because you were the first person that they have contact with. There has to be some kind of guidance put in place so that they understand when they are putting their information out there. I mean, because you guys know as well as I do, the second that something happens, who are they going to call and who are they going to blame? You. That's what they do. Anytime there's a problem, anytime there's an issue, they're going to call, they're going to blame you. So I'm not sure what the program is now, but the American Land Title Association is working with the CFPB to probably put something in place, and it'll probably be nothing more than like handouts that you give to your buyers and sellers. You know how that works. So that would be what I would expect coming out. So even though there is that vulnerability, we still want you to send everything encrypted. I mean, that is the best thing for you. That way, you can at least say, I have done my due diligence, I did what I was supposed to do, and that way, you know, you don't get the nasty phone call. So, what I have is there's different things that the FCC does put out there, and I have them up here and you can get some. So the first one, is start with security. And what this does is this kind of goes through what should be secure on your machine. You know, it's just a little information that kind of explains to you the network security. And that kind of gives you an idea of where to start and how to secure some types of information. Ah, and here it is. This is the one where the malware. And let me tell you a little bit about malware. The nice thing about this, and I have, like I said, a resource sheet up here with all the websites, is this is free. And let me tell you the difference between free services and paid services. This is a company that's free, and as the government, they want you to protect yourself. They don't want anybody being hacked from anywhere. They don't want to see our money being sent out to China and Russia like is happening now. So these things, like this malware here, is updated constantly. They are constantly updating this. You're not paying for it. They want you to be protected. So this one has the latest and the greatest. A service that you pay for may be, oh, we have an update. You want to pay $15 for your update? Or, oh, we update every month. So a paid service may be getting that information, however, you don't have to pay for it. It's free and better access because you don't have to wait for an update. They just put it in there and you download it. So this is the malware that we kind of recommend that you can get that's not going to cost you anything. The other thing, like I told you, because of the vulnerability, you've got to know the employees, the suppliers, your assets, each email, because if you are sending it encrypted, it doesn't mean it's secure. So you need to know, am I expecting this contract? Do I really want to click on this contract, you know, or maybe I should pick up the phone and call, you know, because let me tell you, these people are extremely creative. I mean, they are texting a processor in an office. Okay, a seller and a processor are texting back and forth. Of course she thinks it's the seller. You know, it's got the seller's telephone number on there. It looks like it's coming from the seller. So there is several things that are happening that, you know, are pretty much going to be out of your control. And there's just, you've got a due diligence. There is certain stuff that you guys have to do because there is a certain responsibility. So, of course, the only thing that you can really do is to educate yourselves, educate the buyers and the sellers, educate everybody. There's plenty of videos out on the internet. The FBI offers some wonderful resources on their websites too. So what happens? Your employees should understand, or you should understand, like I said, what's happening in the industry right now. And like I just told you, the communication is a big one. The small wires are going through, the larger wires aren't making it so much. We had a large wire that went out, and fortunately, from what I understand, banks in China aren't open on the Chinese New Year, so when we sent out the wire, that one day a year that they were closed, that $150,000 came back to a law firm. So when he came in, he was like, $150 went out, it went to China, it was rejected, and it came back. It really wasn't rejected, the bank was closed. So, you know, he's tracking it down, where's this 150, who sent it out? Well, they have no idea, but it went out, and it didn't get stopped. The only reason it was caught was because the bank was closed. So, you know, could be anything. It really could be anything. So, there's plenty of videos, there's plenty of stories, there's plenty of things out there that can help you so that you can better understand exactly what's going on. The other problem that we have is that you have a duty, you have a legal duty to protect your buyers and sellers' information. This guide here is from the FCC, and what this tells you is exactly what your duties and obligations are. So, if you are handling contracts or you're handling personal information of your buyers and sellers, you have a duty to protect that information. Otherwise, you will be responsible. So these little books here kind of are guides for businesses that go through and let you know kind of how to protect yourselves. And these books are very, like, it's large writing, so it's pretty simple, basic stuff. They're not asking you to go hire, you know, an IT company and you know, lock down your systems. They're just asking you to do your due diligence, like using encrypted email, having conversations, notifying people. So that's the kind of stuff that's covered in this little booklet here, and kind of goes through what you're supposed to do. So the other problems that we have is your software if it's not up to date. So if you're working in your office or you're working at home and your software hasn't been updated, it means that it may not be updated enough to prevent one of the hacking techniques for coming in and taking over. So it's always important to update the software. The antivirus, like I showed you guys, especially for your home machines, that's a great one because you can just run it anytime and, you know, clear everything off that's on your machine. Because I know a lot of people do work from home and a lot of people are sending out things from home. So make sure that on your home machine, if you're doing that, that you have a good malware. Backups. One of the things that we do recommend is the cloud for backing up. The reason we recommend the cloud for backing up is that when it's out there in all different places. And when you want it, you're calling it in and it's coming in and you can look at it. Well, it makes it very difficult for a hacker to go out there and find all the pieces to the puzzle and bring them together, and they don't want to do that. They're looking for the whole pie. So the nice thing about the cloud is it's just got a little bit more security. You know, it's harder to go in there and hack. So all your information is pretty safe out there. But regardless, you do want to make sure that your backup is reliable. The other thing that we have is your cameras on your laptops. So it used to be that the red light comes on when your laptop is on. The red light does not come on anymore. So you don't know if the camera is on or off. So what we tell you is to assume that that camera is on 24 hours a day. Put a Post-it note on it, a sticky, a Band-Aid, whatever. And I don't know how many people use their camera, but we really do recommend, because that's a new thing right now, and it actually happened at our office. We were hooked up, and all of a sudden, Steve's like, oh my gosh, I can see myself on my laptop, you know? And so I was like, what? You know, went in, and sure enough, something was happening. Somebody was playing with Steve's camera. So we were able to sit there and watch the whole process take place. So it happens. Somebody was trying to figure it out, obviously, because eventually they were able to do it. The red light was on. After a few more minutes of playing, the red light just, you know, disappears. So of course we're just assuming, you know, it's still recording, because that is common practice now. Is it used to be you could see that red light. Well, now they figured out how to get the red light off. So got to be cautious. Cover up your camera. That's another way. This is a big problem. This is your Wi-Fi, your free spots. If you're working at Panera Bread, or you're working where there's free Wi-Fi, anytime you hook up your phone or your laptop to this Wi-Fi, anybody that's on this Wi-Fi has access to your machine and everything that's on there. Nice. So, anytime that you hook up to a free Wi-Fi, you have to be very cautious. You might as well assume, I mean, you're not going to want to go to Panera Bread and check your bank balance. That could be the most worst thing that you could possibly do, is sit at Panera Bread and think you're going to bank or pay bills or shop on Amazon. So use these wisely. We recommend that if you have a hotspot on your cell phone, or get a hotspot on your cell phone if you're working out of an office or away from home, because these anybody can access. I mean, and I went to a convention, a hacking convention, where they just had screens of stuff pulled down, and anybody that was signed on to the hotel, their usernames or passwords are just screaming down. So it's just an example of, oh, this is how easy it is on a, you know, if you go to a hotel and you're gonna work, bank, again, use them wisely. They're open and free for a reason, because they're open and free. So anybody can see what's going on. Same with your cell phone is connecting to one of the Wi-Fis. So one of the things that you'll notice, or maybe you haven't noticed, is that a lot of business phones and a lot of business companies use Apple products, Apple phone. There is a very large difference between having an Apple product, a Mac, as opposed to having your Samsung or your Android that's connecting to these Wi-Fis. So your Apple phone, for instance, has way more security on it than the Android and the Samsung. And an iPhone, I don't want to say it's impossible to hack, but it's almost impossible to hack. So it just has, same with the Mac, you know, it's an Apple product. So they're a little bit different in that the Samsung and your Androids, those are open sourced. So when it's open sourced, it means it's very easy. You know, hackers are really not hacking into the Apples like they're hacking into your regular Samsungs, Androids, those type of things. It's just harder. So try to get a hotspot. That's really the best way to protect yourself. The other thing that you have to be cautious of is if somebody does hack into your email, or your seller says, I got an email from you, you know you have a problem. And at that point, you now have a duty. So if you know that something has happened, somebody hacked your email, somebody sent your buyer or seller something from your email, you have a legal obligation. So, and the first thing it does when you open up this book is to call your lawyer. So they take it pretty serious. So when you have a data breach, what this book basically says is these three things. Secure your operations. That means that you've been alerted that somebody has hacked into your email, or your buyers called you and said, hey, did you just send me this contract addendum? And you're like, no. And they tell you it happens more than not, because I was on the phone with my colleague and we were working on a project, and he said, oh, you know what, I'll email that to you. And I said, okay. And he says, well, it'll be a while, I'm at a meeting and I'll get it over. About 5 minutes later, I get an email from Ted with an attachment. And I'm like, well, I don't know what the attachment is, and I happened to, you know, be looking at my phone, and I didn't open it, and I went up to the office, and you know how you have the viewing pane on like Microsoft Outlook, it kind of displays that email in there. Well, I'm looking at that email and I decided to click it up and open it. And it just so happened that when I put my mouse over top of his email address, I was going to go down and click on the attachment. It said Ted at Stewart, but it wasn't a W, it was 2 V's. The 2 V's looked like a W. And so I was like, oh, obviously that's not coming from Ted. So I didn't open the email, but it was just very strange that, you know, within 5 minutes of our conversation that he was going to email me, I get the email. So anything is possible. But when something like that happens, and let's say that your buyer says, oh, I got this, or your seller, oh, I got this from your email, then you've been, you know that there's a breach, and you're conducting business with a person knowing that there's been a breach. So basically what, like in this book says, is that you have an obligation. You have to secure your operations. That means don't be sending out anything else from your machine. Don't be emailing anybody else. Don't do anything until you figure out what's going on. So you want to secure it, you're going to fix it, and then you're going to notify everybody in your email. And they have a way in this book, in a little form letter that you can type, so that if something does happen, you have an obligation. You have to let people know that your email's been hacked or there's been a hack. If they have any issues, call you. But there's, like I said, you have an obligation to these people if your email has been breached or anything happens. So this book here kind of goes through, and it has a form letter that you can type up or send out so that you just notify them what happened. And then you're good. And then, of course, you want to fix it so that it doesn't happen again. And again, it's probably one of those cases where you have no idea what happened. You have no idea that you've clicked on something. You don't know what happened, so it's kind of difficult to fix. So in that case, you probably have to take a couple more steps on your machine to make sure that you've ran malware and that you close things down, and you need to fix that problem. So the other thing, be aware, proactive, spam filters, know your source, where they're coming from, no personal information, phishing emails, avoid obvious passwords. One of the other things that we always say is use a sentence for your password. Don't use a word for your password. So it could be like, I have 4 kids, or 3 kids, or my car is blue. It doesn't matter, my car has 4 tires. But if you create a sentence, it's easier, or it's harder to hack than just your word with a couple of numbers on the end. So the longer the password, the harder it is to crack. The harder it is to crack, they're going to leave you alone. They're going to go to somebody else, like, this is taking me forever. Oh, this guy's only got 6 letters. Well, this girl's got 20. Of course, they're going to go to the person that has 20-letter password as opposed to the person that has a 20-letter password. So use a sentence. That's one way. An antivirus program, a free one. Don't open the attachments. Firewalls, pop-up blockers, those are all really good things that you can do. One of the other things that we recommend, and this is for our smaller companies, and I'm not sure if you guys might use a settlement company that's just maybe like one attorney, a small law firm who's just practicing and does closings every now and again, and doesn't really have the security of like an IT department, doesn't have a lot of processors, so he really doesn't need all of that security. In that case, we always recommend having a separate machine in an office for banking. So like if it's just a one-man operation, put a separate machine, like a laptop, and this is kind of where you do your banking and stuff from. You're not emailing from here, you're just doing your banking and your important stuff. So that's one way that you can kind of help keep things a little bit more secure. The FBI cybercrime website, better insurance coverage, like an ESB, that's something that Stewart has, and a lot of insurance companies are coming out with, because these ESBs cover cybercrime. So the other problem that our industry has is the bank doesn't want to pay because a settlement company or buyer or seller, like because money was wired out, that's not their problem. You didn't secure your information. The ESB, what those are designed to now cover cybercrime, because with this industry and this being something that's very new, a lot of the E&O insurance isn't going to cover this. The other problem is that if there's fidelity coverage, it's $150,000. Well, if somebody's going to steal money, it's typically not going to be $100,000. They're going to go for $200, $300. It's going to be a substantial amount of money. So we recommend that make sure the coverage is going to cover you if something happens to escape your office by accident. backup server, outsourcing your network security. And we recommend this, of course, for very large organizations. And you guys are REMAX, so you probably have something in place already. So, you know, you're protected. You're already good to go. But a lot of this is if you're working from home, you might want to be cautious. The videos. And like I said, I have a bunch of resources here just so that you can kind of look through and, you know, figure out what your duties are, what your responsibilities are. There's like 10 things that you can do to avoid fraud, you know, things of that nature. What's real important right now with, like I told you, the letter that went out where they want to educate the buyers and the sellers, the other thing that they are doing now, and you'll notice this on the Alta, on TAN, the FBI sites, right now, there's a button and a link on all of these websites where they want you to report incidences. So you can go in and you can report them anonymously. It doesn't have to be anonymously, but what they want to know is, did you get an email today that, you know, was mysterious and wasn't, you know, and actually there's like I believe it's this book here, there's actually like a website that you could go to for the FCC, and they want to know every time you get a phishing email. I mean, that's how much they want to track what's going on, because they really want to know where this stuff is coming from and where the, you know, they want to know what's happening. So right now, all of the websites that deal with real estate and security have a button so that you can report your story. So like the stories that I've told you, we go in and we report all of these. TAN is looking for, you know, horror stories, because of course that's, you know, that kind of helps people understand what's going on. So many of the websites out there want you to report whether it's just an email or whether you got a mysterious text. They want to know, oh, somebody did try to wire out some funds, but the bank called. So even if it's a failing attempt, they want to log all of those attempts. And I know it kind of seems like a pain, but it's kind of like one of those things where, you know, everybody's got to participate. They can't stop this. I mean, you know, our network security for our government agencies is just as important as it is for our title company. So they are, you know, if they can secure the big stuff, then we can figure out how to secure the smaller stuff. And that's why they want you to report. So they're asking you to report anytime that you see anything. They want to know. And like I said, there's many of websites. This is the actual FBI website where you can file the complaint. So there's, and like I said, other resources. There's tons of websites that have like videos or let you know other people's horror stories. This here's the list. You can file a report with the FBI, report with TAN. The Keep It Informed and training videos. What those are actually videos that kind of go through what the latest and greatest stories are, or what you should be looking out for, or what's, you know, what's new. And like I said, right now it's the wire fraud. That's the big one, or trying to change a check to a wire, those type of things. In the communication, the payoff letters. So we have, and this is like kind of behind the scenes, we have some settlement companies now that have been hit with the wiring where like they got a Wells Fargo, but the information was changed. So now people are keeping a bank of where they typically wire their payoffs. So instead of using the payoff statement, they now use the wiring instructions, or they verify with their main book that the wiring instructions that were provided on the payoff statement are what they have in their book. This is the extra level of security that I'm talking about, that because there's so many vulnerabilities, you kind of have to go over and beyond what you normally would do. And just because it's secure doesn't necessarily mean that it's secure. There's vulnerabilities out there. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, it's always kind of scary when people realize exactly how vulnerable their computers and their cell phones and that kind of information are. I have children, and they can easily get things from the cell phones, you know, by bumping or touching or those type of things, and they can do things that I have never, I mean, that would take me forever to figure out that is an app for them. Mm-hmm. So there are hacking apps, which means that if and I can tell you, my 16-year-old, she's pretty bright, and if she were to walk into Panera Bread and get off what everybody's phone, what they had on there, she could do it in probably less than 5 minutes. And from an app, on a phone, that's free. So that's how easy it is to get the information. And that's kind of the other thing with the difference between the Samsungs and the iPhones. The iPhones are more secure, so you don't have that vulnerability. You know, you've seen where on the malware where you have those pop-ups, those will actually, that same type of malware will show up on your laptop. It'll also show up on your Samsung phone. And what we found was that like a few of our girls that are offices that were kind of doing their Christmas shopping on their phones from work, that was where the problem was coming in, because they have a Wi-Fi at their office, but it's an open Wi-Fi so that when people come to closing or settlement or anything of that nature, that they have access to the Wi-Fi. So their phones would just access that Wi-Fi. So they were, you know, banking, and she was buying stuff from Amazon, and she was doing this quite often from work, but then could not understand every few days she kept getting something in her bank account where she would have to call and say, I didn't make that purchase, I didn't make that purchase. Not making the connection that every time she's shopping on her phone and paying through Amazon, she's getting dinged in her bank account. So, and it wasn't until we did a presentation that, you know, she was like, I wonder if that's why. And I was like, yo, yeah, absolutely. You know, every time she would shop, somebody would hit her bank account. Same thing with, and typically if you find a regular, we had one of our gentlemen in our settlement office that had a, for 6 months, and he didn't check online, didn't happen to notice, he would just go on and check every so often online, like check your bank account as long as you got money in there, not realizing for 6 months in a row, a payment had automatically been coming out, and they're small, like $10, you know, $9. It's enough to not notice, but when you put that together with about 40 people, and you're not calling and rejecting it, it works every month. You've got 40 people, you've got $400 every day going in there for people that aren't checking their bank account for that small amount that's coming out. So make sure that you keep an eye out. Yes.
I had that for 2 years. And once I went back and looked at my statement, I started seeing it was 50 cents, 10 cents, $1 each month.
Yes.
I only recouped back $15 worth of it.
Right, and it's because nobody really pays it, and that's what they count on, is that you're not going to really pay attention to that, or sometimes, oh, it's just $5.
Yeah, and when I went back to when it originally started, I saw that I bought something on Amazon, not one of the Amazon covered websites, but like a toy or something.
Right.
And it was 2 different companies, but it was the same company that was taken out all the time.
Yes. So did you got, yes, that's
I
stuff that
called
happens,
them, and they only gave me back, you know, $15 worth. They said they were sorry, they don't know what happened. And I called the other company, and the same woman answered from that company.
Oh, right. We had no idea what happened.
Yeah.
We've just been taking your money for years.
Yeah.
So, well, obviously, there's all sorts of things. That are,
You wouldn't have noticed it. It wasn't until somebody had put on Facebook that someone hacked their account, and it was small amounts, that I went back and looked, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
Because I did what you said. I would check my account, every once in a while.
Yeah.
Never noticed it because it's such a
and
small
I always just
increment.
make sure there's money in there. As long as there's not a little negative
Right,
sign,
right.
I'm good to go.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not until you kind of start going back and look, and then we don't. We all probably do that. We don't go through and look at every entry on our bank statement, you know, until it gets close to payday, and then we're kind of keeping track. But, you know, for the most part, sometimes we don't. You know, we check it and make sure, oh, yep, that looks good, or the front page looks good, and you're not catching things like that. Yeah. And the banks are really good now with the wires, with the positive pay. Usually, you know, there's a phone call, there's a second level of protection. So you send the wire, you have contact. So a lot of our agencies are really, you know, doing their due diligence and protecting the wires. But the problem is that the hackers are communicating with the settlement companies as a buyer and a seller. And that's the scary part. Yeah. And that's what's happening now. That's what's so popular. And I mean, there's, like I said, we get a phone call every day at our office with some wild tale of, you're not going to believe this one. And so they'll find a way. They will find a way.
So in essence, we should tell our clients, before you wire anything or you get an email to wire, just give us a call first before you do it.
Absolutely. And that's the sad part. With the demonstration that I showed you about the encrypted email, there's still that vulnerability. And that's the difficult part, because how do you fix that? Well, you fix it by doing things the old-fashioned way. Yes?
On a Samsung type phone, you can't use the malware on that. Is there any way to protect the phone?
Not really. No, it's kind of, I mean, the only time that you really need to be careful is when you're logging onto Wi-Fi's that don't have passwords. You know, anything that's password
Unlimited
protected.
data now.
Yeah.
So I don't have to use
And
Wi-Fi.
really, it only comes from, like, I've had my Samsung, and I've never had any issues. I actually caught a virus on my Samsung once, but basically what it was causing my phone to do was to reformat itself. So my phone would completely format, which is really a pain because, you know, when you have your cell phone for a couple of years, the last thing you want to do is accidentally format it. But it kept doing that. And I have seen the malware, the pop-ups on a Samsung. I wouldn't even begin to tell you how, besides formatting your phone and starting over, how to fix it.
Yeah, I tried to get on that through a website. You can't.
Yeah, no, and it's more for a desktop. I mean, yes, if you've got a problem on your phone, you probably want to shut it down, reinstall your apps, put your credit card information in on those apps.
I don't put credit card.
And one of the things that we do, we also recommend is a lot of people have a hard time putting their banking information on their phones. Well, we don't recommend that you put any banking information, anything on a Samsung. Don't bank from your Samsung. Don't anything to do with your bank, the Samsung. Just don't bother. You know, unless you're at home on your Wi-Fi or, you know, that way. So just be cautious on the Samsung.
Is it Samsung or just
Android? Across,
okay.
I know I always say that, but I just mean a non-iPhone.
Okay.
How do I put it that way? A non-Apple product, a non-Apple phone. Because that software is completely different. And that's why, because they're not hacking in to the Apple, they're hacking into, you know, the other software because it's much easier, and that's where they're getting their information. But the, like I said, aside from shutting it down and starting over, I don't think there is anything that you can do. We recommend getting a separate credit card. For instance, if you want to make purchases and you want to do business on your card, like if you want to buy apps, get a credit card that has $50 on it. Or open up a separate checking account, put $50 in it, transfer it over, and make payments on the internet or on your phone out of that credit card.
So if there's no money.
Yeah. And of course, your PayPal account. Yeah. Now, my problem is like I have parents who will not, they're even scared of PayPal. So it's and they want to make purchases because we all know that right now, you know, the internet that's how you do things. They're even scared of the PayPal. I don't think anybody's really had issues with PayPal. I've had it for years, no issues, nothing. But they recently opened up a checking account, and that way they can transfer online. My dad put $10 in that, and with that little debit card, and that's the one that he uses. And that he just makes sure that the money is tracked through that one. And if somebody was to get access, they wouldn't have access to no more than $50. So that's just one of the other ways that you could protect yourself.
Yeah. Just a quick note, banks advise that you use credit cards for online shopping because if it does get hacked, if your bank account gets hacked, you're fighting to get your money back. Versus with a credit card, you're fighting to not pay that money.
Right, and the credit card company,
they have more security built in through their insurances so that you won't have to pay those versus your bank account, you'll have to end up.
Pay those, right.
My wife had an account, she had an identity stolen, and there was like $5,000 that was charged at a Sam's Club. We never have had Sam's Club. They opened it up, but since it was on the credit card, we paid nothing and we were completely exempt from it. But if it hadn't been on a credit card,
there's a whole different ballgame. That's why
because the money's already gone.
Depends on the bank too, because there's certain banks that will cover you up into a certain amount. Right. You don't even have to file, and then when it goes above that amount, then you have to file to get that money back.
Yeah. Well, and just kind of put this out there, one of the other things that we recently had was, you know how you go to a settlement, or you might have your settlement agent come here? We had an issue, and again, this is like identity theft issue, where the realtor, the buyer and the seller's realtor were there, the buyer and the seller were there, the settlement agent. The real estate agent was going to make copies of the ID, and what she did was she handed it to the reception or whoever's out at the front desk to help out. Hey, would you make some copies? And which is like a normal thing to do, right? You wouldn't think there's anything wrong with that. Settlement happened. The next day, there was a phone call that says, hey, who was that girl that made copies of the driver's license in the office? Is she licensed? I don't know her, some stranger. You gave our information, you gave our driver's license to strangers. So guess who's paying for identity, the theft, the $15 a month for 2 years? Yes.
Really?
So, absolutely. And what it was that the real estate agent had the girl up front make copies of the driver's license. How harmless is that? It sounds pretty harmless. Apparently it was not. So that's just something else that you really have to be careful of. You know, it's everywhere. And it was just an issue because the real estate agent just so happened several weeks before had a closing where the girl that made copies of the driver's license had stole the information. And they had a problem. So they just waited until another scenario happened again to then decide, oh, well, you can, and what it was they, you know, it was a negotiation. She said, you know, I'm so sorry, the only thing that I can do is offer to pay for this for them. They didn't have a loss and they didn't steal the identity, but the thing was the potential was there and they caught it right up front. So she's like, I'll pay for 2 years, you know, so she's still paying, but that's just some of the things you have to be cautious of.
So we should just fax it or drop it off.
Right, the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
We're back to fax machines and driving a car over.
You can't even fax it anymore because most people have e-faxes.
I
that
don't
come
even
through
know that
email.
anybody has a fax machine anymore. I
Most
think it
people don't.
automatically comes e-fax.
Yep.
I mean, that's, yeah.
So it's an attachment, it's a PDF attachment.
Basically, it's do the best that you can do. I mean, that's the only thing that you can do, you know, and it kind of just educate, hey, you know, make sure you tell your buyers, when you send that over, try to encrypt it or, you know, give it to me and I'll send it over to you or, you know, something
Is there
like
a
that.
program that we can get to encrypt?
You should have a program. I'm sure that Remax probably has something set up to
Do we
do
do?
Remax,
But I
right?
think it has to do with your email server.
You have to, because as a CFPB, all of the real estate companies and as the regulation, the law as of October 1st, had to be sent out encrypted. Any personal information has to be sent out encrypted. Effective
So
October
is there a
1st.
I'll repeat this.
I don't know. Like we have our, you know, like Stewart title, like, so October 1st, what happened was in like Bob's office, so on October 1st, when the ruling came down that if you had, the ruling is if you have access to anybody's personal information, you have to send it encrypted. So when that came down on October 1st, we, Stewart Title, attached like zip form is what we call it to our email, and it sits. We have the option where it says send. We have two options: send encrypted, send normal. So anytime I write an email, I just click one of those two buttons. We don't send. I don't have personal information because I'm Stewart. I'm the underwriter, so I don't ever. You know, I get to know a name and a problem, so I don't have personal information. But we still are. You know, our company's like, hey, it's good. Let's just send it all encrypted anyways, even if it's just a person's name. So on October 1st, like Bob, he gave me a call and he's like, you know, what are you guys recommending? Well, we recommend zip form just because it's the most popular and the cheapest. And it just kind of attaches to your regular software
Why
program.
have zip form?
You have
what I
zip
was
Remember, we all have zip form. No?
That's different.
That's
Oh,
different.
yeah.
It's a product, it's still, it's zip form
Those
is
are
a
documents.
product.
Those
Oh,
are,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
That's not a.
But you've got like most, like, and I'm not really sure, but typically it might even be something that you're not even aware of that you have access to. I'm really not sure because I'm not sure how, you know, Remax is set up, but you as of October 1st, you were supposed to be sending everything encrypted, everything. I mean, if you, or let's just put it this way, if the information contains personal information about somebody, it has to be encrypted. That's the lenders, the real estate agents, and the settlement companies. And that was all, that's why the CFPB was put into place, was to protect the buyers and sellers' information and to protect them and to do what's best for them. So that's why, as of October, you should be encrypting absolutely everything. That, like sales contracts or anything that has, and you think about it, it has to be information that they can put together to identify a person. So if it's a name and an address and a phone number, that's plenty. You know, if you're writing an email and you're just saying, you know, so and so and so and so, and you're talking names, that's not a problem. What's a problem is if you're sending over a sales contract and it's not encrypted. That's the big problem. So you want to make sure that you send over all of your sales contracts encrypted. And like I said, because the thing is they're going to start tracking. That's why the government and TAN and everybody is tracking everything, is because they want to know where it's coming from. That's the bottom line. They want to find out where's his vulnerability. We made a law in October that said everything that has personal information and it has to be encrypted. So now they're looking and they're finding out, you know, why is this happening? Where's it coming from? So you want to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do and make sure that you're covered.
So is there a way, like if you use Gmail, is there
No.
something?
That's what
And
I'm
the other
asking.
thing is you shouldn't
But
be,
that's what happened to me. So I had that fake, contract come to me. Said, please download. I'm like, oh my God, I already got an offer on the house,
right,
And I, dummy me, because I wasn't sure. I'm like, this looks suspicious, because he had tried to come through HomeSnap Pro a couple days prior to
Right.
that, and said, I'd like to, tell me about the house, my client's interested. And it was all fake, and we weren't sure,
right.
but it had come from a legitimate, yeah. So I tried to download it, and I'm like, oh crap.
Oh,
So a couple of days later, thank God I had John upstairs, Gmail, Google somehow interacted and
That's a good thing.
I don't know what it did, but it bounced back, because
Stop
it
the
tried to send it to
download.
all my other contacts
Yeah.
in my contact, and it didn't go through.
That, you were
So it
very
was coming.
fortunate, because
I am,
most of the
because it
time
said
it does get
undeliverable,
out.
undeliverable, and that, Gmail automatically shut it down.
Yeah,
Oh, that was
that's
And then I
right.
had to reopen it up, so that was Gmail that did that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
And the
what does
thing-
that mean? Like,
Well,
thank
that
God I
means that you
had
got
that.
very lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
Gmail has done that for me too, and it
Yeah.
also shows you on a map where the original email came from and makes you change your passcodes and everything.
Right, and they
Oh,
want
you
you to go
had
out.
to do that to even get back in Gmail.
Right, but
I
did
did.
it show you the map of where it came from?
It didn't, like a DNS or whatever?
I don't know, because with Gmail, it just gives you a map and says it came from Nigeria.
Oh,
yeah,
I did
the
not get
original
that.
email.
No.
Yeah. And you
It
can,
could have been
those
from-
you
yeah.
definitely want to report too. You know,
Yeah,
you
I
get,
did.
yeah, you
Well,
definitely.
Gmail did it themselves too. They just, after
Yeah.
that, they give you this, letter saying, be careful, don't open, all
Oh,
this
I didn't
information.
get that. Yeah.
Reset everything.
And you just like,
You
then
know,
in
reset
time
it.
is probably different too. When it happened to you, it was a different time and than it happened to her,
Right,
and
'cause
so
this was just
now
recent.
different, things get
Right.
put in place,
That's
and it
true.
gets.
So look, when you do get things from like HomeSnap Pro or Zillow or Trulia, make sure they're legit, because this
So
one's
it's
not.
Yeah.
no Gmail then, what?
Your secure email that's provided by your employer. Like, do you guys have a Remax email address?
Yeah.
I do, but I have
Uh-huh.
forwarded to my
So
Gmail.
Uh-huh.
you can use, you can use SkySlope to send stuff encrypted if you got secure documents or DocuSign.
I mean, the problem is that legally you should not be sending out personal information from your personal account. That's bottom line, because you are sharing somebody's personal information with the entire world. And you're not securing it, you're not doing any due diligence, you are actively providing the entire world with your buyers and sellers information. And let me tell you what's on that sales contract. This is how they're communicating with our settlement companies. They have the buyer's name, buyer's address, seller's name, seller's address, forwarding addresses, telephone numbers, the date of closing, who the lender is, who the loan officer is, the telephone numbers of the lender's company. Every single date and time is on that sales contract and that information that you're sending over. That tells a hacker every single thing about that transaction that they need to know. Everything. So you need to think about when you're sending that out, that is you who is responsible for that person's private information. You have a legal responsibility to protect that person's information if they are giving it to you. So
In other words, when we get an email, after we get it or whatever, we should throw it up in the SkySlope and then delete it immediately from our email account.
you don't have to, you don't have to delete, you mean like if you're getting a sales contract? So if you're opening something, it doesn't really, so you're not really, yeah, it's a whole different ballgame when you're opening it. The only thing that you're going to be able to see, whether if they've sent it encrypted or not encrypted or whatever, but when you get it, the only thing that you can really do is look at it to determine if it's real or not real. If it's not real, you don't think it's real, you're not going to do anything. If it's real, I mean, you can, contact, oh yeah, I sent that over, and if you're on Gmail or whatever, and it was something that they were legitimately sending over, you can open it up or read it or, whatever. But if you were emailing a sales contract to the settlement company, the last thing you want to do is email it out of your personal Gmail account. I mean, think about it. Think about yourself. Do you want to give your personal information to somebody that you don't know and let them send it out across the internet so that any hacker has access to it?
So can you put something in like a password protected zip file and send it and then send a second email with?
Oh yes, and that's another way that you can send stuff to better protect it. Absolutely, you can zip it up, password protect it, and that's the whole thing. Is you want to protect it some way because that's what they're looking for. if a buyer's gonna come after you, or you're gonna get that call, and they're gonna find out that, oh, none of this, you know, these 5 buyers here have all had their identity theft stolen, and what's the common ground? Well, they have the same realtor, or they have the same, that is all through RE/MAX, you know? So there'll be a common ground, and
Or
they're
you
gonna
could do
wanna
the
know.
iCloud thing, right?
Right.
And send it to the, get it to the title company,
Right.
right, okay.
So you just wanna really, you know, you wanna be careful, and you wanna be cautious, because you do have a responsibility.
What if
You know.
what if you're keeping, like your past transactions in your Gmail file? That is, vulnerable too?
I wouldn't keep anything. I mean, and here's the thing. You know, I work with lawyers. That's what I do. So my standpoint is I always protect myself, and I would say, well, there ain't a chance that I'd be storing that stuff on my personal machine. But that's just me.
Cause
You know
I mean,
what
now
I mean?
they have Folio
It-
for Gmail, which is.
Right. I mean, I would just be cautious of what you're allowing people to access, because if you have all of these, just say that you have 20 copies of contracts, you have 20 people's personal information in your Gmail account. Once that Gmail account is hacked, they have all that.
Wow, this is getting scary.
It is.
It is very scary, which is why, like I said, that they are now getting the CFPB involved, and you guys will probably see, like I said, all the news is all about it, and what they're trying to do is educate the buyers and the sellers, and the thing was, when they started educating the buyers and the sellers, if the buyers and the sellers are sending things out encrypted, they're gonna wanna know, are you sending out things encrypted? Because now they're, you know, I've got this brochure that says I'm taking out a loan, and I have to send out my information encrypted. So, you know, if the buyers and the sellers are gonna be required to send their stuff encrypted, of course, they're gonna expect you guys to be sending it encrypted as well.
Now, if you, I'm sorry to interrupt, if
No.
you are using, say, our RE/MAX email address, but you forward all of your mail to Gmail, does then it make it just as vulnerable?
Yeah, because you're just emailing,
Okay.
yeah, you know, with no protection, I mean,
Well,
now,
not emailing it, but your RE/MAX email is connected to your Gmail, so
Right.
when you get an email in your RE/MAX email, it goes to your Gmail. Yeah,
Same thing.
it's still forwarding it. Okay.
right, it's
the
still an
same
email.
thing.
The only way that you're securing anything is by encrypting that one thing that you're looking at. Period. Because you can't encrypt your whole email, you know, you can't, well, you mean, you can encrypt a hard drive, I mean, you can encrypt whole things, but for the emails, each one is separate. So each one has to be encrypted. Everything, you know, and then of course you open it and you would store it where you want to store it, or, you know, I wouldn't recommend storing it in my Gmail, because Gmail is hacked all the time. Like you said, you know, Gmail is, like, especially when they get your contact list, that seems to be the most popular thing, because you'll say, oh, I didn't email all this. Same with the
Right.
Facebook. You guys have probably seen where they've hacked into your Facebook account and have sent out to all your friends something that you've liked, or, you know, something like that. So that's another thing that just kind of happens, you know. The thing is when you keep your work and your personal life separate, then you can say, oh, well, I've done all of this for my clients and my work. But when you combined the two together, and you have like contracts and personal information and all that stuff tied up into your personal email, if something is to happen, I personally would just be able to say, oh, well, the company stuff's here, see, it's all safe, and if they find a vulnerability, it's fine. I wouldn't want them to say, well, why do you have all this personal information about people in your personal email? You know, so just keep that in mind, and just keep it in mind, what would you say if somebody's information, if they tracked it back to you? What would you say? Would you say, I did everything that I could do to protect their information, or would you say, oh, I mailed that out from my personal email? So you have to feel comfortable with what you're doing. You have to feel that you've done your due diligence, because that's what they want. They want you to be responsible. They want you to educate the buyers and the sellers. They're going to try to get everybody on the same page. And this reporting system is a tracking system. So they want to know where these vulnerabilities are coming from. So with the TAN and the Title News and all the different places, they're going to start, if people start reporting, they're going to start looking to see, well, is the vulnerability, you know, all coming from the realtor section, a settlement agent? So they're trying to track it. So you definitely want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as best as possible. Any more questions?
Oh, just makes me sick.
Oh, God.
Do you have any idea? I always feel great when I give this class, because everybody walks out going, oh, that just stinks, you know?
Oh, good ball.
Or people walk out and
Everybody
go,
making
"There,
their
look at my
fax
Gmail."
numbers.
Yeah, get the fax numbers.
Fax numbers and PO boxes, please.
Yeah.
Everything handwritten from now on.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah,
I mean, like,
maybe
we're
we'll
going back to the olden days
old
of,
school.
you know, I'm gonna
Well,
go
that
drop
was,
off.
it was good,
It was
right?
good
It
the
was
old
good
days.
then, for all this email and stuff.
My
Yeah.
handwriting's encrypted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Mine
right.
is too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank